Right. Welcome back to the DJ Scottos What to Why Now podcast, the show where we dive into the real stories behind the people you think you know. Today's guest is a man who's lived about five lives already: the rave scene, royalty, the actor, the producer, the podcaster, and all round force of nature. You might know him as Terry Stone, but if you were around in the 90s, chances are you remember the name Terry Turbo. From throwing some of the best parties in the UK history to starring in the cult classics like Rise of the Footsoldiers, Terry's journey is anything but boring. I am really excited to introduce my very special guest today. Let's make some virtual noise for Terry Stone, aka Terry Turbo. Firstly, thank you so much for joining my podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, Scott. No, it's good. It's good to be on. I know we've been trying to do this for a while now, but I mean, we got there in the end.
We did.
I
We
think
did.
life got in the way, didn't it?
It
So
did. It did. But look, obviously, just before we get into the questions and stuff, what does Terry do on a normal average day? What's your sort of
yeah.
start to end of the day?
Well, it all depends what I'm doing, but I mean, I think on a normal day, I get up. I'm a coffee man, so I have a really strong coffee. I have water with all my vitamins. I normally then go to the gym and get tortured. Um, I say tortured because if you're going to the gym and doing it properly, it's not really that much fun.
No.
But yeah, so I've been doing I do that normally 5 times a week, but again, it depends on what I'm doing. Then I come back around sort of 10ish. No one in my world really wakes up or does anything till 10 o'clock onwards. So I know a lot of these health and positivity people say you should get up at 4 in the morning and you start the day early and all the rest of it, which is great. But I think if I was doing any emailing people or trying to ring people 4, 5, 6 in the morning, they'd tell me to fuck off. So
Exactly.
so yeah, so I don't really do that. And then I either in the office on the phone speaking to people, doing Zooms, doing meetings, or I'm in London or I'm in Essex. It all depends what I'm doing. When I've got a film on, obviously, that sort of consumes my life. So I'll probably, I'm sort of underwater for 2 or 3 months with that. We've been developing a lot of content, and we've got a lot of stuff like now on the sort of production line, and we've got things happening all around the world. So I'm quite excited. But again, with this stuff, it's some of it's so crazy that there's no point talking about it until we've actually got a date and it's happening. And that's kind of what I do, because a lot of people are saying to me at the moment, "Oh, well, when's your next film?" And it's like, well, we're going to announce it soon. But we're always doing stuff behind the scenes. We don't need to tell people on social media every day,
Yeah.
oh, what we're doing. But when we're doing something, we are vocal about it. In life, lots of people talk about what they want to do, not what they're doing.
Yeah.
And for me, I only want to talk about things what I'm doing because they're happening. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not hopefully if all the planets align, this will happen. I'd rather say we're in production, this is happening, and then people go, "Wow, where did that come from?" Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Okay.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so that's and then on the weekends, I try and spend it with my family. I've been doing a little bit on TikTok. I've been trying to do an hour a day. A lot of people sort of said to me that seems to be where it's at the moment. So I've been spending an hour a day on that, which has been fun. I met some good people. Obviously, I met you on there. And what I found is good about TikTok is you connect. There is a load of idiots on there, but
Yeah.
the majority of people I've connected with have been decent. They've been sensible. They've got businesses. They want to collaborate. We've done events. They've attended their events. So I've actually found TikTok to be probably one of the most productive. I mean, I've always been Facebook and Instagram and they've been my two go-tos. I think Twitter's crap. I'm not a fan
Yeah.
of
I
Twitter
agree.
at all.
Yeah.
And unless you pay, they don't let you. your profile doesn't get seen.
I agree with you as well. And by the way, I think he's playing down TikTok. By the way, he's becoming quite a big creator on TikTok. He's getting a lot of traffic, and I really do enjoy coming on to your lives. And I've got a few more questions about that a bit later on. But
Lots of people, lots of people sort of say, "Oh, what's happened to you? You're on TikTok," and it's like, so what? Do you know what I mean? I'm on Instagram as well, and I'm on Facebook. So what? Do you know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of actors and there's a lot of celebrities or famous people that don't use social media because they don't want people to know what they're like.
yeah,
They don't want to interact with people. They want to just be, preserve this sort of mystique, this mysterious stuff. But unfortunately, the world's moved on,
it
and
has.
in the old days, you could be one of these people that pops up in a movie, and if they want to watch you, they can only see you in the movie. But now people are, and I think it's to do with reality TV, because I think when reality TV started, that meant everybody then was interested in what everybody else is doing, and then social media come along at the same sort of time. So it just made everybody like nosy, and I think people want to see what's going on. They want to know what's going on. They want to watch your life. Some people don't even, interact with you. They just want to watch them. But then
Yeah.
other people do want to interact, and they do want to have a chat. And for me, it's sort of like, it's like if I'm out and about and someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, can I have a picture?" or "I love your films," I always say thanks. I always say yes, because without people watching my films and following me and supporting me, I'm not going to be doing what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's why I've always got time for everybody. We do a thing called Rave Tuesdays every Tuesday, as you know, me and Nick. And
Yeah.
I was doing it last night, but I got waylaid in meetings in London, and I was sitting there and I was doing it for like on a bench in Waterloo Station, and these two guys were like sat opposite me and looking over, and they both looked like tramps,
Yeah.
and I just thought, these guys ain't going to think, "Oh yeah, well he's distracted. We're going to take his phone." And then they walked over, and I was like, "All right, boys," and I went, "Yeah, I just want to say we love the podcast," and I was like, "Oh right, okay,"
Wow.
and they said, "We're undercover police," and I was like, "Sweet." It was just, but they looked like two tramps, but it was just funny because I clocked them, and then they clocked me, and then they come over, and we so in between doing the Rave Tuesday, the TikTok live, I'm talking to the undercover tramps at Waterloo Station. Do
Something
you know
right.
what? The good thing about our podcast, right, is we're going to hit 100,000 subscribers this month and 20 million views.
That's
And
amazing.
the reality of it is there's working class people watching it, middle class people, there's upper class people watching it, there's billionaires watching it, there's police watching it, there's barristers, lawyers watching it because it's fun. Do you know what I mean? We just have a bit of a laugh, and I think it's entertaining, and everybody loves true crime. Do you know what I mean? And that was, even though we don't, Eddie Hearn's not a criminal, Ricky Hatton's not a criminal, but they've all been affected by crime. They've
Yeah.
all been connected in some way, to crime. And I think having people on that are interesting, but that have a criminal connection, like a lot of the actors that have been on aren't criminals. Do you know what I mean? But they play criminals in films. So
Yeah. They're brilliant.
again, it's just a nice play on what that space is, and everyone I talk to is always watching or listening to a true crime podcast or watching a true crime documentary or a TV show. I mean, right now, Mobland's obviously big on Paramount. Um, that adolescence thing with Stephen Graham was big. But they've all the common denominator is there's a crime thing running through it. So
Yeah. And by the way, I've got some more questions about how that was started in a bit. But before I go into the kind of life story, I did take the liberty of asking some of my listeners what questions would they want to ask you. A bit more of a fun one. And I think we received quite a few, by the way, but these are the ones I thought were quite good. So the first one was you're forming a rave supergroup. You can pick three people, dead or alive, famous or not. Who's in it?
I would say MC Skibbity,
Yeah.
MC Stevie Hyper D, and Andy C.
Do you know what?
If it was if it was drum and bass,
yeah. Do you
if
know
it
what,
was
Terry? That'd be mine
garage,
as well. I honestly, those are my favourite three people, and we'll talk about One Nation in a bit. But
yeah.
they were my heroes, and growing up, and Andy C is still my hero as being a DJ. He's the one that I looked up to for one day. I want to be like you, which becoming harder and harder these days. But no, I love that super group. And by the way, this must be hard for you because it must be choosing like your, your best your children. Who's the best three? Because I
No,
know these
to be
DJs and
honest,
MCs are not. But
Andy C is the only one out of that scene. I mean, you could probably say chasing status, but there isn't that many people that have become international superstars.
no,
And the reason I picked Stevie Up with Ian Skibbity was because they were arguably the best MCs, and
100%.
unfortunately, both of them are no longer with us. And
Yeah.
they were both my resident MCs. Stevie Iper in the '90s and Skibbity right up to when we sold One Nation.
Yeah,
So
unbelievable. They were part of me growing up, and actually, do you know what? I will tell you a secret. That actually, when I heard that Skibbity had died, I was fortunate to do a show with him during COVID when they weren't working, so they were coming on to like radio shows and stuff. So we booked him to come on, did like a Q&A with him, and did a little set. Got a rewind as well. That was my claim to fame.
lovely.
But when he died, actually, he was such a nice guy. When he sent me some jingles as well. But when he died, I actually cried because it actually
Right.
reminded me like he was the person that when I went out from 18 years old to when I couldn't really go out raving every weekend anymore. But he was my hero. I loved him, and like having Hyper D was in the earlier days. So I can relate to those people. And when he died, I cried. I was like, I was
Do you know?
absolutely.
Do you know what? A lot of people won't know this, but MC Skibbity made his movie debut with me in a film called Rolling with the Nines. So if anybody's watched that, they will remember him being in it. And if they haven't seen it or don't remember it, watch it again because he plays a drug dealer in it. Dizzy Rascal was in it as well. So both playing drug dealers, which was a bit of a bit of a joke, really. But
Yeah, he was
but
good. He
they
had good personality, didn't he?
yeah, and Kano was in that as well. That was
Oh,
his
was he?
first movie as well. Yeah, so we had Kano. We discovered Kano before Netflix, before Top Boy. So a lot of people don't know any of this stuff. So it's a little bit of trivia for you, Scott.
Yeah, definitely. And by the way, talking about films, if there was a film made of your life, what would it be called, and who would play you?
I would say I would call it King of Clubs. And yeah, whether it was a film or whether it's a TV series, I think we've done this weekly King of Clubs series on our YouTube channel, and it's been going really well.
Brilliant, by the way.
I'm just trying to think. I would probably I would say that that's made me realise that it's definitely a TV series because the book is just an overview of what happened, and some people said, "Oh no, that didn't quite happen like that," and blah blah blah. So the thing is, there's that thing where recollections may vary, right? So, and there was a lot of stuff that wasn't in the book. So I think if we did do a TV series, you could basically start it from like the late '80s, where the rave scene starts,
Yeah,
and then it could be the journey of how this kid in the council estate loses his job, gets involved in the rave scene as a flyboy, sells tickets, does a magazine, starts doing raves, and then becomes the biggest promoter. But my actual story, I wasn't. I was anti-drug, so I wasn't one of these people that. Lots of the other promoters would do a rave and then go on a massive bender for like 3 months and then run out of money and then put another rave
yeah,
on.
yeah,
And I never got involved. I had loads of people approach me about uh, selling drugs and stuff, and I was always like not interested, don't want to know, because the thing is, I was making so much money out of doing the events. For me, it was like, okay, I could make more money if I entertained that, but then I'd end up risking my livelihood and going to jail. And I was like, why would I do that? So lots of people, um, other promoters probably got involved in it. It wasn't for me. But again, if you did a TV series, obviously it's a true story and you'd fictionalize bits of it. So you could make it into like a British Power. So I think that would be
be a great
an
watch.
interesting play. But I think because the club scene's changed so much, the reason why I think it's a great time to do it now is because lots of people are having that, thinking about the good old days, the
Yeah,
'90s. We're never going to have that again. And then we're not, right? The club scene now, there's a couple of clubs in London, right? There's Drum Sheds, there's Ministry, there's, um, Fabric. But there used to be like 20 clubs.
mm,
There used to be big raves in fields. Now it's just sort of festivals and day raves, and it's a shame, really. But you know, I definitely think where they're doing a lot of these sort of period things now, I definitely think that would resonate. And I would say there's an actor called Jack O'Connell. I think he would be pretty good. But
What playing you?
but there's loads of great actors. But it would have to
Okay.
be
Right, I
some.
think you should commission it. Someone should do it. But don't get behind it because I like watching the podcast. It was very good to reminisce. And there's things that you said, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. And you do forget, don't you? But like, it was so good that you kind of like the way you articulated it in that and brought it to life and made it funny, but also serious, but also like how dangerous it was as well. It was good. The way you balanced it, I thought was really, really good. So I think there should be a way of doing this into a film or some sort of series. I think you get.
Well,
I think
listen,
a lot
I'm
of people watching it.
open to it. So if Netflix or Amazon want to do it, give me a
They're
shout.
listening right now, guys. Come on, get in touch. A few more questions. Who's the most famous person you have in your phone right now in your phone book?
Um, well, it depends. See, it depends what you're into, right? If you're into TV and films, Vinnie Jones. If you're into cars, Richard Hammond. If you're into football, John Terry. I mean, there's loads of different people that
Yeah.
are in my phone book that I've met over the years are all depending on boxing, Eddie Hearn. I mean, so depending on what your thing is.
Is there anyone that made you nervous, Terry? Ever that you've sort of met and got a bit, I don't know, had that sort of nervous feeling because they were like someone that you thought, oh my god, you've looked up to.
Do you know what? And this is like kind of weird, really. I think that some people that are famous, right, have got massive egos,
Yeah,
and they are really pricks, right? Where you go up to them and say, "Oh, I love your work," and they'll be like, "Yeah, mate," and walk off.
yeah,
Or can I have a picture? No, I'm not doing pictures. So you just think, "Oh, fuck off." Do you know what I mean? But I've never had that experience. But I've had people that have said to me, "Oh, I'm a massive fan of this guy or this girl," and I went up and asked for a picture, and they basically just blanked me and told me to fuck off. And that's sort of, look, I know the more famous you get, if you're Taylor Swift and you walk down the road, you're gonna have fucking hundreds of people that picture, and it probably does create a bit of anxiety. And the problem is if you do one, then you've got to do them all. Otherwise, they get upset and go, "Oh, you had a picture of him, why don't you have a picture of me?" But I don't really get nervous when I meet people because I always look at all the people that I've met, whether they're billionaires, whether they're famous, they've all said the same things. They've all said, I'm a normal person. I want to be treated as a normal person.
yeah,
And I think when you have any level of wealth or fame, what it basically does, if somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, I want you to meet my friend," right, and then they're nice to you, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, "What do they want from me?" You don't ever think somebody's just being nice for the sake of being nice. You always have this paranoia that they're either trying to fuck you, set you up, ask you for some money. So I think all the people I've met, I've just tried to treat them as just normal people,
like
and I think if I met somebody like Robert De Niro or Al Pacino or somebody like that, who are my sort of all-time legends that I've been watching since I was a kid, I probably would be a little bit nervous around them. But again, I think I'll either meet them and go, "Wow, I really like meeting him. What a legend!" Or I'll walk away and go, "What a fucking div," because I'll have no qualms in being like that because I just think we're all humans at the end of the day. We all piss and shit. And if we get a cold, we're all the same, really. We just, so
sometimes
I think
it's your mental health. It's your mental, isn't it? How you think about it. If you were a wrestler, what would be your name and what song would you walk into the ring with?
I'll be Terry the Undertaker Stone. And I'll probably walk into "Here I Come," ready or not, you can hide.
Big tune. It's got to be something like that. It's got to be. That's
the
a
drum and bass
tune.
version, not the Fugees version.
No, exactly. If you could choose any reality program to be on, which one would you choose?
I saw something on Netflix recently uh, called The Bear Hunt, which looked quite fun, right? So it was kind of like a little bit of I'm a Celebrity without the bugs, and a
Right.
little bit of that SAS thing. So I thought that looked like fun. Um, I think I'm a Celebrity is the big one. So it'd probably be them two. I don't think I'd be any good in yeah, MasterChef because I can't cook. And I think if I went on Strictly Come Dancing, I've got two left feet. So, I mean, for a comedy act, I'll probably be hilarious. But and dancing on ice, I mean, that's just never going to happen. So,
Nah, nah,
I think the only
100%.
thing I could do is probably those two. Um, and also, I think the problem with doing these reality programs is, you once you've done one, then it's like, oh, do you want to go on Celebs Go Dating? Do you want to go on Celebs Go Shopping? Do you want to go on Celebs Have Their Hair where they do their hair? And you end up in this like celebs do this, celebs do that, and then you just become a reality star. And I've enjoyed the podcasting thing because it's fun,
Yeah,
and I've enjoyed acting because it's fun, and I enjoy producing because I like creating stuff. So
yeah.
the things that I'm doing right now, the acting, producing, and the podcasting, are my three things that I enjoy. So there's an old saying about if you do something you enjoy, you never do a day's work. I agree
Yeah,
with that comment, but you still have hard
it's
days,
still
you
hard.
still
Yeah,
have
it's a hard work.
losses, you still have lows, you still have highs. So even though you're enjoying it, I don't think anybody has ever done, even if you're a world class boxer, you probably enjoy winning the titles and the money, but you don't enjoy people punching you in the face. You know what
No,
I mean?
exactly.
You do it because that's what you don't like getting up at 5 in the morning going for like 20-mile runs, but you do it because you want to. You know what I mean?
But be the
So,
best.
yeah.
Celebrity Big Brother just started as well. I actually think you'd be good in the Big Brother house because of like your story, your personality, and you don't take
I
shit for
think I think.
anybody.
Do you know what? I would enjoy it, but the problem I've got is, you know, I hate these people that play victims, and I hate
Oh
all
no,
this
I know,
all
yeah,
this nonsense where you say something to somebody and then they go, "Oh, you've said that because you've said this about me, or you've said this because you don't like me, or you've said it because you're anti this, or you're far right that." And I just watch some of these things, and like Jim Davidson is a
oh
great example.
yeah,
He's an older guy, 71 years of age, right? And he doesn't like political correctness. And he was in, I don't know if it was MasterChef or Celebrity Big Brother. He was in one of these
he's a
shows,
Big Brother, wasn't he? Yeah, I think it was.
and there was a guy in there that was openly gay, right? And Jim sort of said, look, he goes, I know loads of gay people. I don't really care whether they're gay or not. And he made a joke. And said, oh, the guy said something or did something. And he said, oh, you're such a shirt lifter. Or he said something along those
Yeah,
lines.
yeah,
I got really upset about it, and he's going, "Oh, you're anti-gay, you're this, you're that, and you hate gays," and and then it's Jim Davidson, the gay hater. But the
yeah,
thing is, he's a comedian, you know what I mean? And he was just having a little bit of a banter with the guy, but then the guy obviously got offended by it, and I think that's the problem now. People are walking around looking to be offended, so
yeah,
you have to be very careful what you say, and my opinions may not resonate with everybody else's opinions, and then if you're on something like that and somebody has a row with you about something, that they can edit the episode or the series to make you look a complete cunt.
that 24 hours day, and they get like a 35 or an hour highlight part of that, and then you say they can create like a
A lot
narrative.
of people don't know how reality works, right?
Yeah,
But reality isn't really reality. What they do is they script it, right? So if we're in Big Brother and me and you are on there and we have a disagreement about something,
yeah,
right? And you say, well, I don't like this, and I say, well, I do like it, and then you go, well, I don't fucking agree with you, and I go, well, I don't agree with you, mate. You go
yeah,
over there, I'll go over there, and then what the producers say is they'll say to you, oh, next time you see Terry, fucking say this, and they'll be saying to me, next time you see Scott, say that.
yeah,
So then they want us to clash, right? Because if everyone's sitting there getting on, it's not good TV. So they wind the contestants up, they get them all at it, and then they actually sort of set up things. So they'll say, oh, Terry, when they go in that little diary room and they're talking, they go, oh, Terry, how you getting on with Julie? And you go, oh, yeah, really well. Oh, yeah, when you speak to Julie, Julie, she's done this or she's done that. Why don't you bring that up in conversation, right? Knowing that when I bring it up, they're going to fucking get annoyed,
yeah,
right? And unfortunately, when if you've got 24 hours of film, right, you're going to do and say things that, if they want to make you look stupid, if they want to make you look angry or aggressive, or if they want to make you look like you're opinionated. And the problem is, if they decide actually we're going to make you the bad guy, you're fucked, right? If you're the good guy and they want you to win, happy days. But the thing is, when you go into these things, you don't know how they're going to edit it. You don't know what they're going to do and say. And when you go on them, really, you are literally lining yourself up to either get cancelled or in trouble. I was speaking to Ricky Hatton the other week because he's a good pal of mine, and we were chatting, and he said, "Oh, I've not done I'm a Celebrity yet, but I think it'd be quite good fun." And I said, could you imagine me and you in there? It'd be fucking hilarious. So, but that's what I'm saying. If you was in a show with somebody that you knew or somebody that you had fun with, then you're not going on your own. And the only reason I go on it would be for the experience and the exposure. I think there's a famous lesbian podcaster that was on I'm a Celebrity, and she went on there. A lot of people didn't know who she was. If you knew her podcast, you'd know. But that obviously blew up her podcast and blew her up. So she's now become, from just being in that show, she's obviously been paid. She's had an experience, but she's actually got something off the back of it. And I think if you're going to do something like that, there's got to be a reason.
Yeah. Guys, petition now to get everyone to get Terry into I'm Celebrity this year. So we'd love to see you.
I don't like the idea of sitting on that plane for fucking 24 hours. And I'm not sure. I don't know whether I'd be any good in them challenges. I think I do well at them.
What, eating like cows?
I'm not going to sit on TV and eat kangaroo testicles. It's just not going to happen. So that night, if I'm picked for that,
no one's eating.
Everyone's going to be hungry, and they're all going to be saying what a cunt I am for not eating kangaroo testicles.
You know what, though, to be fair though, it's like that's a difficult one. I don't know how you could even train for that. But listen, right. By the way, they were some like the fun questions. And thank you everyone for your questions.
Yeah,
it was nice. But yeah, before we talk about what you're doing now, I do want to sort of go back to where it all kind of started. And can you take us back to your childhood and what was it like sort of growing up?
Yeah, my mum and dad both worked. So they were both at work all day, and my nan sort of looked after me. And I think, when you're growing up, and you're on an estate or above a shop, you do kind of end up sort of gravitating to the wrong people. And I think, I don't think I was pushed academically, and I didn't realise how important school was. And I think, look, lots of people that have done very well in business aren't necessarily Harvard graduates or A-star students, but I think if I'd have actually had someone saying to me, you've got to do your revision, you've got to take these exams seriously, you've got to study, you've got to, I never studied for any of my exams. I just didn't. And that's why I didn't. I got a grade 5 CSE, which is like, if you was going to say what would a dunce get, that's what a dunce would have got. But when I left school, I just didn't enjoy school. I didn't like the authority. I didn't like my mum and dad split up when I was 12, and I think that also made me rebel. At the time, you just think, this isn't fair. My mum ended up, moving some bloke in who was an absolute fucking cunt and used to beat her up and beat me up. And I think as you go through that, when you come out the other side, you're just like, I just want to leave school. I fucking hate school. And you sort of hate the world, really. But then when I actually started working and I started realizing, actually, these hands I've been dealt don't have to be, where I end up. And I think that's the problem. A lot of people that either come from a broken home or live on a council estate or don't have a particularly great upbringing, or they don't have any money growing up. It doesn't mean that that's your life, but I think a lot of people buy into, well, that's my life. I'm going to get a council or a house. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have a couple of kids, and I'm just going to go into work 9 to 5 and 5 days a week. And maybe we're going on holiday once a year. Some people get into that thing and just, they're happy with that, which is great. But I didn't want to do that. I actually thought, well, the world's a big place. I want some of the other stuff. I want what them other guys are doing. And I think that's what inspired me to go out and do anything to earn money. So, I've done every job you can think of, from being a dustman to assembling boxes in a warehouse to working on a building site, mixing up cement to cleaning floors. I mean, I did it, stacking shelves at Tesco's at night. I just did anything,
Yeah.
just to earn a pound note. And
Do you have any siblings, Terry?
I've got a half brother, but I didn't know I had a half brother till I was 16. So,
Right.
but I grew up as an only child. But again, I think when you grow up, if your parents aren't on you, you can't do this, you can't do that, you got to do this, you got to do that. My mum was out working, my dad was out working to keep the roof over their head. So I kind of get, it's very difficult, for them to, and if they're not particularly academic, they wouldn't have. And I suppose a lot of it's down to ignorance. If you're not academic, if you left school and got a job, and that's how you did it. As a parent, that's how you, pass it down. So I think it wasn't their fault. I think it's just that they had their upbringing, and they just thought that was how
Yeah.
they weren't around because they were both working. So
What was
um,
your dream job as a child though? Did you have anything when you were young? Was there anything you really wanted to do? I know
no,
it sounds like you had a good work ethic, by the way, which is probably something
the
that's
only the only
carried
thing
with you.
I did a paper round, like probably everyone else. Worked on a milk round a couple of times, um, and I like boxing. And when I left school, I think I said I wanted to be a boxing manager or a boxing promoter. I knew I was not going to be a boxer, um, but I just fancied doing something in that space. So, but that was the only thing I liked.
What got you into the rave scene? What made you
I got
sort of
I got made I got made redundant when I was 17, and I think it was 88 or 89. I can't remember what year it was. Probably 89. People kept saying to me about this rave music coming out to a rave, and that's what really got me going to raves, because
yeah?
I think I had the peer pressure. Went to one, thought, wow, this is great, and then uh, decided I wanted to do something in the rave scene, and the only job I could get at that time was giving out flyers outside nightclubs. So I'll become a flyer boy. You didn't need any A levels for that.
Was there anyone that inspired you other than your peers? Was there anyone that inspired you to start promoting?
I started flyers, then I did tickets, then I did the magazine, and so I think somebody said to me, "Oh, you're doing all this stuff. You're yeah. The only thing you're not doing is putting events on." And I just thought, well, maybe I should try doing some events, and that was essentially what I did.
And Terry Turbo, where did that name come from?
Well, when I was 12 or 13, uh, break dancing was a big thing then. So all the kids wanted to be break dancers, and there was a film that came out called Break Dance the Movie, and there was a guy, I think he's called Boogaloo Shrimp or something, and his name in the film was Turbo. So because he was so good and I was so bad, it was more of a piss take when I was breakdancing. People used to call me Turbo Terry, um, and it just stuck. So I mean, people still call me that now, or Terry Turbo. So even though I've not used that name since 2003, it stuck with me. So I just have to sort of accept it.
And by the way, like obviously, I'm going to talk a bit about how I can relate to seeing you and go into a lot of the raves and stuff. And I think when you did your recent podcast and reliving some of those, I think it was very clear to say that your parties were very. I felt very safe actually in those times. When was the moment that you felt like you had to really kind of build a team? I know you talked about it in the podcast a bit, so
It was
I'd
early
like to check
on
it out.
when I did my first rave, and when I did my second rave, people, I was a fucking kid. I was like 20 years of age. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So when you're that young, putting on raves in London, you're just a bloke from Surrey, a kid, and you're treading on people's toes. So where we used to do a club in Aldershot, called the Rhythm Station, and there was a lot of parachute regiment guys working on the door there, and they ended up being my first guys. And then I just built the team out from there. But I think it just gradually got worse. It started off with hearing about promoters getting robbed by security teams and by gangsters, and then you heard about other people just turning up at the doors causing trouble. People were letting people in fire exits, and they had weapons on them. or bringing drugs in. So I was like, look, this ain't happening on my events. So I ended up more people, but really the people were there, A, to protect me, B, to protect the punters, and C, to make sure the venue security weren't letting people in the fire exits, weren't walking people through not paying. Because I felt like I had a responsibility. If you got 3,000 people in a rave, right? You don't want them getting stabbed or shot or
Yeah.
overdosing on drugs. So for me as a promoter, I took it very seriously, and I was like, I don't really want this to happen on my night. So I'm going to do everything I can and set in a load of different measures to sort of protect everybody. And it gradually got worse. I'd say from 98 to probably 2003, it got really bad. Those were the last 5 years. And I'd say the reason I sold the business really was because it was just getting silly. I mean, there
Yeah.
was people doing drive-by shootings. You was putting events on, and you ring up a club and they'd say, who's DJing? And you say, here's my list. And they go, you can't book him, you can't book them. I mean, the So Solid crew got banned from performing anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So you sort of thought, well, if I can't book the lineups I want to book, it's like, and also, you could have a problem. So if there was any problems, like if there's any trouble, if there was a shooting, if there was any drugs, the venues could lose their license, right? And obviously the venues were becoming selective on who they was like, we want you to come in and put 3,000 people in here so we can sell everybody £5 bottles of water and £10 cans of beer, but we don't want any drugs, we don't want any aggro. So it became that because they were worried about losing their licenses. And what a lot of these venue owners did was they developed their venues into flats and buildings and sold them on and got out of it, because if they had lost their license, they just have an empty building that they probably owe millions on. So a lot of the super clubs got redeveloped, got sold, and then people started just shifting out of. And also think, if you look at, the police drug test people now. If you have an accident or if you're pulled over and you're driving erratically, they drug test you. So if you was, coming out of a rave out your nut, and then they drug test you, you lose your license.
God, I've got
So
some stories
I
about that,
think,
by the
and, I,
way.
and,
Kind of
and also,
driving home.
it's about, employers had started doing random drug tests. So I think a lot of this stuff killed the rave scene, because I think,
Yeah.
the clubs were shutting down, people were getting drug tested at work and by the police, and people were just like, well, if I'm going to go, if I want to go and get off my head, I'm either going to get an Uber or a taxi, or I'm going to sit home and do it. And I think all these things contributed to because in the 90s, the early 90s and the late 80s, people would be going out, for days. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They go out Thursday and come back Monday.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that stuff, it was just how it was.
Yeah.
But I think people didn't like the violence. People didn't like, when the mugging started. People didn't like it when they, cut. And the problem is, all these nice venues were always in Tottenham or Brixton or Hackney. They were never in nice areas.
Tottenham's the
So
one I had the work. I think my one experience was at Club UN, and Tottenham was when
but that
I remember.
was really moody.
Yeah, I
Like
remember being
really.
in there once, and I remember 5 was on the stage, and I remember just hearing this sort of, which I thought at the time was like, some bulbs smashing, and I heard this noise. Everyone's just like, and I've never had experienced this. You see films and stuff, and I was like, and I remember just hearing this pop, 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 and then everyone just sort of jumping to the floor, trying to find out what the hell's going on, and then I could hear 5 going, guys, just calm down, like, and then remember just people coming out of the club, and then obviously if people have ever been to WN, the police station's across the road, I think, if I remember, or it's nearby. And that was crazy to come out, and it was just like everyone with bulletproof vest on. And it was just such a whole experience. And I remember getting in the car, and which by then I was one of those bad people. I used to go to raves, drive to Milton Keynes, and come back and stuff, but which I'm not proud of. But that was the first time I really experienced that. And I can't remember, it wasn't one of yours. I think I was at a desire or something like that, and it was just like, oh my god, and that really shook me up, and it put me off from going for a while.
The aggravation drove a lot of people away. I think that as I said, the drug testing meant people weren't. They were like, oh, I don't want to lose my license. I don't want to be in work on Monday, and they go, come and piss in this bottle, and then I lose my job. So
Yeah,
I think people started to change their sort of things. And as I said, the clubs died out. And I think, unfortunately, when everything starts dying out, it was a multitude of things that happened that caused the scene to go into decline. I mean, it's kind of come back now with the events and with these sort of old school things. But we're doing an old school event called United Nation with Forever Garage at Ministry of Sound on Sunday the 4th of May, with Ministry and Matt Janamont, which will be interesting.
oh wow.
Massive lineup, all old school garage and jungle and drum bass. So I'm excited about that.
Is that funny though to come back, and does it feel weird doing it again, Terry, or does it feel like you've never? It's just like riding the bike again, and it's like you've never been away.
What I struggle with is in the old days, we had a mailing list, right? So we could just mail out to 10,000 people, and we'd sell it out. Do you know what I mean? But what's happened now is we've had to start again from scratch. So we're still building up a mailing list, and I think it'd be interesting to see what happens. We did two events last year. We did one with Rave, which was like a day rave, which was fun.
Love it. I've done Rave before. My kids love it.
Yeah, and we did, and then we did XOYO, which was good, in Shoreditch, and now we're in the ministry. But I think I'll see how it goes. I mean, this isn't something that I'm doing. I'm not coming back. I'm not gonna give up acting and podcasting and become a promoter again. But somebody just said to me, "Oh, do you want to do a couple of these old school events?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" So it's more about having a laugh and just doing something fun with some other people rather than wanting to come back and be the big promoter again.
I bet the cost of the DJs MCs have changed since
massively.
20
years.
I used to fair enough to them. They've been doing it for such a long time.
I used to give Andy C 250 quid. Now he's like 100 grand. So
yeah, crazy.
That's why he's not on the flyer.
So is that the other thing as well? If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to share this, but like, is it like kind of your back kind of thing? Do you remember back in the days? Do you get a little bit of like you get a good, I don't know, because they know you, these guys, for years.
Honest with you, like most of the guys have been absolutely great. There's a couple of people that I just won't book because they were just fucking pricks, like from back in the day.
Yeah.
And it's not about me being a baby. It's just literally, if people don't play the game and if people, don't treat you well, why would you ring them up and say, "Oh, I'm back. Do you want to play on my rave?" You just think, well, it's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean? So,
but one thing you were very good at, Terry, back in the day, you were always very good at seeing, like, you didn't have, I can imagine you haven't got a magic ball at home and you can always read the future, but you were very good at kind of like evolving with the scene and stuff. Where did you get that from? Is that something that
do you know what it is? It's like anything. It's like, I like films, right? And over my career, I've been doing this 22 years now, right? Which sounds mad, right? But the films that I've always wanted to try and do something different. But what I've realised, and it's took me 22 years of winning and failing to realise, you just got to stay in your lane. My lane is crime films, right? So I'm not going to be doing any other films other than crime films or films. If I'm doing something about a famous person or a historical figure and it's with like massive talent, then I'll do that. But my sort of small stuff that I'm going to be doing, and when I say small stuff, it's sort of, 500,000 to 2 million, is going to be true crime. Do you know what I mean? And that's it. And I'm not interested in deviating from that. So I'm going to stay in my lane with that. And, I think it's the same with promoting, because I'm interested in the music. I was interested in the scene. I would hear, "Oh, have you heard this guy? He's going to be fucking red hot." And then you'd listen to some of his music or listen to his mix and think, actually, I want to put this kid on my rave. Same with the MCs, We used to have a room called Stars of the Future. So we used to get so many people trying to get us, "I want to play on One Nation." And we'd just be like, "Well, play in the side room, right? I'll give you a £10 guest list. You try and get as many of your mates to come to that as possible, and you promote it. And and if you evolve one day, we'll put you in the main room. And for them, just being on the flyer was a big leg up for them,
Yeah,
And some of the DJs and some of the MCs that played in that room ended up playing the main room, becoming
I can
big
relate to
people.
that.
So we were all about bringing new people in, MCs and DJs. I was into the music, so I'd be in a record shop listening to the songs. I'd be like, "What? Who produced that? Oh, Bad Company. Who are Bad Company? Do they DJ? Yeah, they do. Let's book them. Do you know what I mean? So, I think if you're in something, there's nothing clever about it. It's just if you're into the music. It's same with the garage scene. When the crew started up, I was on them straight away because I was like, this is great, this is progressive. And all the old DJs would be going, don't fucking book them. They're going to bring the wrong crowds in. They're no good, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this is about, and I'm like, no, you're only saying this because you're now not the fucking red hot ticket they are.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
because they're not, because you're not moving on, you don't want to allow somebody else to come in. So I just went, I'm going to bring them in. And, we had Pay As You Go Cartel, we had Heartless Crew, we had So Solid, and, they had a massive fan base. So, EZ, again, he was another one. So I think those
amazing DJ,
DJs
best for
all
me.
grew up, but they all come from nothing. Heartless Crew used to be in Jungle, and they didn't make it in Jungle, went in the garage and then popped off. Same as So Solid, they were all floating around. But again, I've always been like, someone played me a track, and they said, this is going to be number one. And I listened to it and I went, actually, that is a good track. And that was my partner, Jason Kay, who's no longer with us.
Yeah, great
And
guy.
the song was Battle by Wookie. So we booked him to do a PA at our rave. And, on the night he did the PA, and this was just luck. He was number one, right? So everyone's going, how the fuck did you pull that out the bag? Do you know what I mean? Because
You
we was
also
having
like the
some.
Simon Cowell of music as well. Like you had that sense of
But no,
you
it's
could
same with Simon Cowell. People say Simon Cowell's a genius. Simon Cowell, has obviously worked out a formula where, he listens to somebody and goes, that kid's going to be famous or that band's going to be famous. And then he takes them under his wing and he makes them famous. So it's just what I was doing, but I was doing it in the hood with drum and bass DJs and garage DJs.
I hear that you wanted to be an MC, right? You're a DJ. Is that what you
Well,
was
do you
that?
know what? I when I first started off, I used to, but bear in mind, when I was at raves, it was picking up the mic and saying, put your hands in the air, blow your whistles. That
Yeah,
was MCing. There was no lyrics to it. It was just someone going, oi, oi. And,
yeah.
but that was relatively short lived. I only did that for, I think, about a year or something. So,
What would you have told yourself if you listened to him? If Terry Tubber come up to you and said, "I want to be an MC or DJ," what would you have told him when you listened to him? What
I
would the
would have just
feedback
said,
have
mate,
been?
give up. It's like the boxing. I had 8 fights when I boxed, and I won 5 and lost 3. The only people I really lost to were people that were like much better than me and had more fights than me. But I looked at it and I thought, I'm never going to be, a Mike Tyson or Sugar Ray Leonard. So for me, it's like, why would I waste my time trying to? But if I was hitting people and just knocking everyone out, I thought I'd be going, well, maybe I'll take this up as a job, But I did it because I like the fitness. I did it because I thought the discipline and the respect and everything that come with boxing. So I think all that stuff helped.
How did you transition from being a rave promoter into acting?
Really lucky. I sold my business and then somebody was making a film and they just rung me up and said, I'm doing a film, do you want to be in it? And I went, yeah, why not? It'd be a laugh. But if that hadn't have happened, then I would probably never have got into acting.
And what was your first acting gig, and how did you land it?
Well, it was called Hell to Pay. That was Dave Courtney's film, and that was the one. But we filmed that, and then it didn't come out for like 2 years. So that was my debut. But my actual first job, if you like, was EastEnders. So I did 2 episodes of that in 2003, and then I decided, I did My Family. I had a little bit in that. Did the Bill, and then I just thought, actually, I want to make films. And I know it sounds mad, but that was sort of the. So I ended up sort of going from putting on events and club nights to acting and then producing movies.
the rise of the foot soldier. Obviously, people will know you as Tony Tucker. How easy was it to do that role and play it with some amazing other actors as well?
It was good. I mean, it was look. Yeah, that film took 2 years to get off. It took a year and a half to develop. So it wasn't an overnight success. But yeah, I mean, that was probably, I'd say my first proper movie was Rolling with the Nines, because that was the first time I played a proper role. And then my next film was Rise of the Foot Soldier. So if you was to look at my career, you could probably say that I was quite lucky in that, the EastEnders episode I was in, 20 million people watched it. When I did Rolling with the Nines, it got BAFTA nominated, and it was a real cult film. And then same with Rise of the Foot Soldier. So I just got very lucky in that when I, rated these things, they again just resonated with the audience, and people just liked it. So
Mate, honestly, love it. And so you've now stepped into producing. What's been the biggest challenge in producing compared to acting?
I think every time you do something, you got to start again. So you never know how the film's going to do. You never know. It's when you're making a film for 100 million and you've got Steven Spielberg directing it and you've got Tom Hardy and Bradley Cooper in the lead, you can go and sell that all around the world. But when you've got if you think Rise of the Foot Soldier, that was made for 1.3 million, and there's nobody in it, right? There's a bloke from EastEnders. There was a bloke who'd done a couple of little bits in films, and there was Roland who'd been in Football Factory and a Business, but none of them were movie stars. You know what I mean? So when we went out, if we'd have gone out with that film and said, "Oh, let's sell it," right? Everyone would go, "Well, we need to see it first because there's nobody in it." So, doing low budget films and independent films is very difficult because you haven't got the money to get the big stars. So
Yeah.
every time you do a new one, you've got to start again. So that's the challenge. People always say, "Oh, when you've been in a few movies and you've played a few lead roles, it gets easy. Once you've made a few movies, it never gets easy." I'd actually say that acting and producing is the hardest thing in the world. There was a great I can't think of his name now, Richard Dreyfuss, he's Oscar winner, who was in Jaws, working with Spielberg. He was in the paper the other Sunday saying, "I haven't worked for 10 years, I'm skinned." Right? And you think,
Wow.
you're a fucking Oscar winner.
Yeah.
But that's how fickle and how sort of odd the industry is. So, you can make it and get your Oscar or whatever, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna always be in employment. And the only thing that's been good for me is I create my own luck. So if I wasn't doing this, then obviously I'd be waiting for the phone to ring. So I think I found my sort of vocation in life. I like creating content, whether it's podcasts, whether it's acting, whether it's producing. So I'm definitely in the right wheel space. Even when I was promoting, I was the biggest promoter in England, and I knew I was going to sell out the event, but it wasn't easy. You still had to get the flyer design. You still had to book the lineup. You still had to get the flyers out. You still had to sell the tickets. You still had to do the radio ads. You still had to put the night on. You still had to collect all the money in. You still had to deal with all the aggro. It wasn't like you just sat back, smoking a cigar and drinking champagne, going, "Oh, this is great."
Forget that.
And if anybody says to you anything's easy in life, they're talking out their ass. There isn't anything that's worth having isn't easy. It's always hard, and that's why not because if it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
Exactly. And just last few questions in regards to your Criminal Connection podcast, which you've started, I think, September 2023. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but what's been the challenging part of the biggest challenge so far of doing a podcast? I'm new as well, so I'm doing this for the last sort of year. Not as big as yours, but what's been the biggest challenge so far with doing it?
I think it's. Again, it's like you interview people, and there's some people that have been on other podcasts that have been massive hits. There's some people that have never been on a podcast, and they become massive hits, and then there's other people that So I think it's very difficult to. There is no magic formula. I think you just have to. Again, it's hard work and consistency. when we started it off, I was very lucky that the people that I was working with produced podcasts. They were studios, so it wasn't like I was trying to do it on my own. And they do all the work. You know, I might get the guests, I might help with the sponsorship, I might be the host, and I might get the guests, but they're the ones that have to sit there editing it all, creating all the images, creating all the thumbnails, doing all the trailers. You know, there's so much work
I know I can
that
relate a little
goes
bit of that.
into it.
By the way, the editing bit is the hardest part. Is there a favourite one that you're most proud of?
No, I mean the thing is, every single episode, and even the ones that I'm like, oh, you know, it was all right, because I'm critical as well. You know what I mean? I'm not one of these people that watches it and go, oh, you know, everything's amazing that I do. I'm critical about everything I do. So if I don't think something's great, I'll say it's not as good as you know last week. Or if I'm at a film, you know, that's disappointing. You know what I mean? I'm not one of these people that walks around, you know, thinking I'm the best thing in the world and everything I do is amazing. So I am my own critic. But it's very difficult to
yeah,
pick one. I think they've all been good. I think some of the ones that you're not sure whether it was as good, you know, sometimes they pop off. But the one thing they've all got in common is they're all well produced. They've all got great
they
stories.
are.
They all look amazing. They all sound amazing. So, you know, that's all we can do. You know, if
Yeah,
people don't like the guest, you know, I can't work out what every single person in the world likes. If I could do that, then I wouldn't be doing podcasts. I'd be sat probably on a desert island somewhere
exactly,
with somebody
exactly.
feeding me grapes. You know what I mean?
Uh,
A lot of people say I look like Jeff Bezos. Maybe I would be Jeff Bezos.
and by the way, yeah, I can relate to the podcast bit, but it's just have you ever doubted yourself though, through anything you've done so far? Has there been moments where you've doubted yourself, and how have you pushed through that?
Do you know what? I just think you have to have a go. I don't think there's any point. You know, look, what's the worst thing that can happen? You fail. So what? You pick yourself up and have another go. I mean, you know, people seem to get hung up on failing, and people don't like failing, right? But failing is where you learn. You know, if everything you did you got right, you know, you get carried away and you'd think, you know, you was some sort of, you know, there's loads of famous people and loads of wealthy people that have written books about, you know, about how they become billionaires or how they become famous. And they all say the same thing, you know, there's been 15, 20 years of failing and, you know, being rejected before I've actually got to this point. You know, people don't remember that bit. I remember it, but, you know, no, but I've enjoyed it. You know, there's not that, you know, you can look back and say, oh, I didn't like that and I didn't like this, but it's all been stuff that, you know, made me who I am. So,
What's next for you?
the podcast is going to hit 100,000 subscribers. That's one of the ball marks
Amazing.
that I wanted to set. Like beginning of the year, people said, you know, where do you want to be with the podcast? I said, well, I want 1 million subscribers, but we got to get to 100,000 first, right? Which we're going to hit probably this month. And then, you know, 20 million views, you know, it's pretty good. We was number one on Spotify last week. So,
Well, well done.
um,
That is
so
amazing.
it's starting to motor. But again, you know, it's been 18 months of every week putting out an episode, every week posting it on social media, every week putting the trailers out, and them doing theirs, you know. But they're building up their own social media channels, and you know, it's been a good. I've enjoyed it, and yeah, I think when you look at, you know, what we've done, you know, we've achieved something really good in a short period of time. So,
Amazing.
and bearing in mind, like anyone who goes, oh yeah, I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to set up my own channel. You know, it feels like everybody's got a podcast, but there's, you know, billions of people that are on YouTube trying to do podcasts, and there's only a few that make it. And I think, you know, I appreciate how hard it is because I see all the work that everybody's doing behind the scenes. So when people say to me, I'm thinking of doing a podcast, I'm like, fucking hell. Do you know how much work it is? It's not just getting a microphone and filming it and putting it on the internet.
No,
It's like,
I know the hours and hours I have to do personally myself because I haven't got the team. Last question. By the way, we'll put the links in the bio to your podcast.
thanks very much.
How do you want to be remembered, Terry? Last question. I always ask this on podcast. How do you want to be remembered?
Don't know. Funny cunt who wore silly wig.
Great answer, by the way. Before I finish off, is there anything you want to shout out any socials, or I'll put these
Yeah,
in the
if
bio?
anyone
But
wants to follow me, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on TikTok. So yeah, Fred. So yeah, if you want to follow me, be great to have you. And obviously, when people are watching my podcast, 80% of them just watch it. They don't actually subscribe, and I don't know why they don't subscribe, because once people subscribe, they get notifications, they get trailers sent to them, they get episodes sent to them, and it doesn't cost anything. And
exactly.
I think that's the beauty about YouTube. Lots of people go, "Oh, I don't subscribe," and it's like, why? It doesn't cost you anything. You set up an account, and if you've got a Google account, you can just quickly click on the thing and set it all up through that anyway. So, a lot of people say, "Well, why do you want the subscribers?" And it's not because they give us any money. It's just so that when we actually release an episode, we can market it to more people through YouTube. And then that in turn means that we get more views, and that in turn means that we get bigger guests. So, that's the reason why we push people to subscribe. And I know the default setting is don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You just said my words now, actually. Thank you. But yeah.
But the subscribes, it really does help.
Massive. Yeah. And by the way, I think the subscribe button probably confuses people. I think you have to pay, but you don't. Terry, honestly, I know you're a very busy man, and I'll probably ask you questions for the next few hours. Honestly, I really appreciate it. It sounds very cheesy, but you are someone that has inspired me quite a lot through my life as well, from raving and also doing his podcast. For you to come on has been, and honestly,
listen, Scott,
thank you so much.
I enjoyed meeting you on TikTok, and we've always had a good laugh and a banter online. And when you sort of mentioned about your podcast, I'm happy to be on it, and
thank you.
I'm sure there'll be a part 2 somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
God, yeah, definitely. No, but honestly, your story is great, and then guys, check out his podcast. Honestly, amazing. Terry, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Nice to see him. Thanks.
Take care
for tuning in.
The What Why Now podcast with DJ Scottos.